From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Tuesday, October 21st. Here's what we're covering on today's episode. The agency responsible for the nation's nuclear arsenal has sent approximately 80% of its employees home from work. With more on this development, I'm now joined by the Journal's federal government reporter Kathy Cook, who's been following this story. Kathy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Gino.
So, Kathy, the federal agency that's going to be engaging in these furloughs is the National Nuclear Security Administration. I was hoping you could give our listeners a little bit of a background of what this organization does, and if today's announcement will have any effect on New Mexico.
So the National Nuclear Security Administration oversees the country's nuclear arsenal, and they've furloughed about 80% of their federal employees, which is about 1,400 people. It's hard to tell. I couldn't confirm how many of those people were in New Mexico. Many of the people who work on nuclear weapons development and modernization and security are contract employees. So in NNSA, this agency has about 65,000 people under its umbrella working for it. And that includes both that 1,800 federal employees and the contract employees. So you can see there's a whole lot more contract employees than there are federal employees. So the Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, today said that they still have money for the contract employees through the end of the month, which is sort of an answer we've been getting a lot when it comes to government shutdown and funding for various programs, is that there's money through October. It's very unusual for them to furlough NNSA employees. Wright said today that this is the first time they've done that during a government shutdown. This is kind of a long government shutdown. We're at day 20, but it's not the longest. The longest was the last one that ended in 2019. It was 35 days. So it's interesting that they've chosen to furlough folks at NNSA for the first time. Wright was in Nevada today, at a national nuclear security site in Nevada, talking about these furloughs. He called for Democrats in Congress to pass the Republican budget bill that would temporarily fund the government into November. He even, called specifically for one of Nevada's Democratic senators to vote in favor of that bill and pointed out, he's kind of praised Nevada's other senator who's also a Democrat, but she's one of the few Democrats who has voted in favor of the Republican bill in the Senate. So it was an interesting press conference.
And Kathy, I want to touch on something you just mentioned about what Secretary Wright said in urging Democrats in Congress to really approve this Republican funding bill. That's really in line with some other things we've heard from the Trump administration and other federal entities under its umbrella. So it seems like that's really a message that they're continuing to roll with.
That's true. We have seen agencies take the unusual step of putting sort of a partisan message on their websites, blaming the shutdown on radical Democrats. And certainly in Congress, we've seen Republican leaders call for Democrats to pass their bill and talk about the healthcare insurance subsidies at a later time, which is what Democrats have in their version of a temporary funding bill, is this push for extending health insurance subsidies. And, Democrats as well have certainly pointed the finger at Republicans and asked them to come to the table and do some negotiating with them about funding.
And Kathy, just for a New Mexico focused picture, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about the entities here in the state that are attached to the National Nuclear Security Administration.
So the NNSA works with national laboratories like Sandia and Los Alamos, who are responsible for helping modernize the nuclear arsenal, right? We've had plutonium pit production at Los Alamos. Sandia is involved in the non-nuclear components of nuclear weapons, so the engineering and the building of parts that go in these nuclear weapons. And so NNSA works with both of those laboratories. The Office of Secure Transportation under NNSA also has a headquarters located here in Albuquerque, and the Energy Department told us today that office is funded through October 27th. So I think that takes us to next week. And so that particular office is responsible for transporting government-owned nuclear materials through the contiguous United States.
And last question before I let you go, Kathy. You had a chance in your story to get quotes from both of New Mexico's senators about the Energy Secretary's announcement. What did they have to say?
So Senator Lujan really called for the Republicans to work with the Democrats on a bipartisan agreement to end the shutdown. This is similar to what he told me last week, is that he thinks the Republicans need to come to the table and negotiate, so that the House has been out of session since the shutdown began, since before the shutdown began. And so Democrats, have been calling for the House to come back so so they can actually negotiate a bill instead of just passing the Republican CR, which would keep funding at the same level. And then Senator Heinrich, said that he doesn't think the Trump administration had to furlough 80% of the NNSA workers. He said that that's a choice and accused the president of risking national security and tanking the nation's economy.
So 80% of the workforce for the National Nuclear Security Administration laid off, but it remains to be seen, Kathy, as you said, how much of an impact that will have on New Mexico. We'll be sure to keep our eyes on it moving forward. Thank you so much for stopping by and sharing the latest with us.
Thank you, Gino.
In other headlines from the newsroom, the New Mexico Children's, Youth, and Families Department is falling short of its promise to license 265 new non-relative foster homes by the end of the year, having added just 78 so far, as lawmakers learned on Friday. The goal stems from a 2020 court settlement that requires major child welfare reforms under the Kevin S. lawsuit. CYFD officials, including new COO Brenda Donald and Acting Cabinet Secretary Valerie Sandoval, say they are working to simplify the licensing process and expand, quote, Foster Care Plus, a new program for children with higher needs that currently serves 26 kids. Nearly 200 prospective foster home applications are pending, but lawmakers express skepticism about the agency's progress. One new foster parent criticized the state's 3-day training as superficial and unhelpful, prompting concern from committee members. Lawmakers say they remain doubtful the agency's new leadership can deliver the promised reforms, with Senator Joseph Cervantes comparing the effort to, quote, shuffling chairs on the deck of the Titanic. The Albuquerque Public Schools Board of Education has decided to halt its search for a new contractor to provide coaching and professional services, leaving the decision to incoming board members after January's transition. The move comes amid elections for 4 board seats, with at least 2 new members guaranteed, as incumbents Josefina Dominguez and Crystal Tapia Romero are not seeking re-election. From 2022 to mid-2024, the board worked with the Washington, D.C.-based Council of Great City Schools under a $60,000 annual contract, but chose not to renew it following public criticism and internal division between union and business-aligned board factions. The new contract bid process launched earlier this year was delayed due to scheduling conflicts. Board President Danielle Gonzalez presented options to either resume, pause, or restart the process, and members ultimately voted to let the next board begin anew. Despite ending the consulting contract, APS maintains its $55,000 annual membership with the Council of Great City Schools. And Albuquerque-based Black Bear Development LLC plans to transform nearly 5 acres of parking lots near the University of New Mexico into the District, a $53 million mixed-use hospitality and retail project. Located at 1300 Lomas Northeast, the redevelopment will feature a 7-story, 140-courtroom by Marriott Hotel, with a voyeur rooftop bar, 20,000 square feet of dining and retail space, 2 standalone restaurants, and a landscape public plaza designed to feel like a small botanical garden. Developers partnered with the Sandia Foundation, which retains 24% ownership stake and will use its proceeds to fund UNM scholarships. The project is also expected to create about 200 construction and 300 permanent jobs and offer hospitality internships for UNM students. Construction is slated to begin in early 2026, starting with the restaurants, retail, and plaza space, which are expected to open by the end of that year, followed by the hotel's completion in late 2028. The district aligns with UNM's broader redevelopment vision for the Lomas Corridor and nearby South Campus TID projects, such as the planned Lobo Crossing Shopping Center. The leading news is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy hearing all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Every subscription helps support local journalism and allows us to provide you with the news that matters to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect sunny skies with a high near 72, and as for this evening, partly cloudy with a low around 41. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.